Welcome to Games from Folktales, a podcast that mixes historical research and tabletop role-playing settings. I'm your host, Timothy Ferguson. This week, Grimm, King of the Ghosts. In the Magonomia Bestiary, I've introduced you to Grimm, the Ghost King. So in this episode, I'd like to give you the source documents and illustrations which led to his inclusion. I'm not a singer myself, so there are 3 versions of the song that he appears in, linked through the blog that is accompanying this podcast. I'd note each varies the title a little. The poem itself is called The Lunatic Lover, but by the time it's being sold in broadsheets, it is Grimm, King of the Ghosts, because they title by first line. The 3rd version is called Dolorous, King of Ghosts, and in that case Grimm has been read not as his name, but as a description of his attitude. There's a modern Irish folk version, which is my favourite, an Elizabethan-styled version, and a non-lyrical version played on the bowed psaltery. The poem, at least the version I used, is from Relics of Ancient English Poetry by Thomas Percy, and here's a recording from a slightly younger me through LibriVox. Grim King of the Ghosts, make haste, and bring hither all your train. See how the pale moon does waste, and just now is in the wane. Come you night hags with all your charms, and revelling witches, away, and hug me close in your arms. To you my respects I'll pay. I'll court you and think you fair, since love does distract my brain. I'll go and I'll wed the nightmare, and kiss her again. But if she prove peevish and proud, then a piss on her, love, let her go. I'll seek me a winding shroud, and down to the shades below. A lunacy sad I endure, since reason departs away. I call to those hags for a cure, as knowing not what I say. The beauty whom I do adore now slights me with scorn and disdain. I never shall see her more. Ah, how shall I bear my pain? I ramble and rage about to find my charming saint, while she at my grief does flout, and smiles at my loud complaint. Distraction I see as my doom, of this I am now too sure. A rival has got in my room, while torments I do endure. Strange fancies do fill my head, while wandering in despair. I am to the deserts led, expecting to find her there. Methinks in a spangled cloud I see her enthroned on high. Then to her I cry aloud, and labour to reach the sky. When thus I have raved a while, and wearied myself in vain, I lie on the barren soil, and bitterly do complain, till slumber hath quieted me. In sorrow I sigh and weep, the clouds are my canopy to cover me while I sleep. I dream that my charming fair is then in my rival's bed, whose tresses of golden hair are on the fair pillow bespread. Then this doth my passion inflame, I start and can no longer lie. Ah, Sylvia, art thou not to blame to ruin a lover? I cry. Grim King of the Ghosts, be true, and hurry me hence away. My languishing life to you a tribute I freely pay. To the Elysian shades I post, in hopes to be freed from care, where many a bleeding ghost is hovering in the air. So this is a lovely setup because it's literally an evocation, but it doesn't give a lot of detail about Grimm. I was looking at The Dance of Death by Hans Holbein for something else at the time, and I stumbled upon a meme. I also found there was a parody of a work by Monk Lewis that included a detailed story for Grimm, so I mixed the two. Here's that parody story, again in poetic form, from Tales of Terror, which was anonymously published. You'll note I changed the ending a bit. Grimm, King of the Ghosts, or The Dance of Death, a churchyard tale. On horror's head, horrors accumulate. Othello. This tale, as will be immediately seen by all tale readers, is written in imitation of the Cloud King and dedicated, of course, to M.G. Lewis, Esquire. Why, how now, old sexton? Why shake you with dread? Why haunt you this street, where you're sure to catch cold? Full warm is your blanket, full snug is your bed, and long since, by the steeple chimes, 12 has been tolled. Tom Tap, on this night my retreat you'll approve, for the churchyard will swarm with its shroud-covered hosts, who will tell with loud shriek that resentment and love still nip the cold heart of Grim, king of the ghosts. One eve, as the fiend wandered through the thick gloom towards my newly tilled cot, he directed his sight, and casting a glance in my little back room, gazed on Nancy, my daughter, with wanton delight. Yet Nancy was proud, and disdainful was she. In affection's fond speech she'd no pleasure or joy, and vainly he sued, though he knelt at her knee, Bob Brisket, so comely, the young butcher's boy. For you, dearest Nancy, I've oft been a thief, yet my theft it was venal, a theft if it be, for who could have eyes and not see you loved beef, or who see a steak and not steal it for thee? Remember, dear beauty, dead flesh cannot feel. With frowns you my heart and its passion requite, yet oft have I seen you, when hungry at meal, on a dead bullock's heart gaze with tender delight. When you dress it for dinner so hard and so tough, I wish the employ your stern breast would improve, and the dead bullock's heart, while with onions you stuff, you would stuff your own heart, cruel virgin, with love. Yuck, rascal! Presumest thou, with butcher-like phrase, to foul stinking onions, my love, to compare, who have set Wick the candleman all in a blaze, and Alderman Paunch, who has since been the mayor? You bid me remember dead flesh cannot feel, then I vow by my father's old pickaxe and spade, till some prince from the tombs shall behave so genteel as to ask me to wed, I'll continue a maid. Nor him will I wed till, these terms must he own, of my first two commands the performance he boasts. Straight instead of a footman, a deep pealing groan announced the approach of Grim, king of the ghosts. No flesh had the spectre, his skeleton skull was loosely wrapped round with a brown shrivelled skin. His bones, stead of marrow, of maggots were full, and the worms they crawled out, and the worms they crawled in. His shoes they were coffins, his dim eye revealed the gleam of a grave lamp with vapours oppressed, and a dark crimson necklace of blood drops congealed reflected each bone that jagged out of his breast. In a hoarse hollow whisper, "Thy beauties," he cried, "have drawn up a spirit to give thee a kiss. No butcher shall call thee proud Nancy his bride. The grim king of spectres demands thee for his. My name frightens infants, my word raises ghosts, my tread wakes the echoes which breathe through the aisle, and lo, here stands the prince of the churchyard who boasts the will to perform thy commands for a smile." He said, and he kissed her. She packed up her clothes, and straight they eloped through the window with joy. Yet long in her ears rang the curses and oaths which growled at his rival, the gruff butcher's boy. At the Charnel House Palace soon Nancy arrived, when the fiend, with a grin which her soul did appall, exclaimed, "I must warn my pale subjects I'm wived, and bid them prepare a grand supper and ball." Thrice swifter than thought, on his heel round he turns, 3 capers he cut, and then motionless stood. Then on cards made of dead men's skin Nancy discerns his lank fingers to scrawl invitations in blood. His quill was a windpipe, his inkhorn a skull, a blade bone his penknife, a tooth was his seal. Soon he ordered the cards, in a deep voice and dull, to haste and invite all his friends to the meal. Away flew the cards to the north and the south, away flew the cards to the east and the west. Straight with groans from their tombs the pale spectres stalked forth, in deadly apparel and shrouding sheets dressed. And quickly scared Nancy, with anxious affright, hears the tramp of a steed, and a knock at the gate, on a hell horse so gaunt 'twas a grim ghastly sprite, on a pillion behind a she-skeleton sate. The poor maiden she thought 'twas a dream or a trance, while the guests they assembled, gigantic and tall, each sprite asked a skeleton lady to dance, and King Grim, with fair Nancy, now opened the ball. Pale spectres send music from dark vaults above, withered legs stead of drumsticks they brandish on high. Grinning ghosts, sheeted spirits, skipping skeletons move, while hoarse whispers and rattling bones shake the sky. With their pliable joints the Scotch steps they do well, Nancy's hand with their cold clammy fingers they squeeze. Now sudden, appalled, The maid hears a death bell, and straight dark and dismal the supper she sees. A tomb was the table. Now each took his seat, every sprite next his partner, so pale and so wan. Soon as ceased was the rattling of skeleton feet, the clattering of jawbones directly began. Of dead aldermen's fat the mould candles were made. Stuck in sockets of bone they gleamed dimly and blue. Their dishes were stutcheons, and coursers decayed were the viands that glutted this ravenous crew. Through the nostrils of skulls their blood liquor they pour. The black draught in the heads of young infants they quaff. The vice-president rose with his jaws dripping gore, and addressed the pale damsel with horrible laugh. "Feast, Queen of the Ghosts, the repast do not scorn. Feast, Queen of the Ghosts, I perceive thou hast food. Tomorrow again shall we feast, for at noon shall we feast on thy flesh, shall we drink of thy blood." Then cold as a cucumber Nancy she grew, her proud stomach came down, and she blared and she cried, "Oh, tell me, dear Grim, does that spectre speak true? And will you not save from his clutches your bride?" "Vain your grief, silly maid, when the matin bells ring. The bond becomes due, which long since did I sign. For she who at night weds the grisly ghost king next morn must be dressed for his subjects to dine. In silks and in satins for you I'll be dressed. My tender soft limbs let their fangs never crunch. Fair Nancy, yon ghost, should I grant your request, instead of at dinner would eat you at lunch." "But, vain ghostly king, is your cunning and guile? That bond must be void, which you never can pay. Lo, I'll never be yours, till, to purchase my smile, my first two commands, as you swore, you obey." "Well sayest thou, fair Nancy, thy wishes impart, but think not to puzzle grim King of the Ghosts." Straight she turns over each difficult task in her heart. "And I've found out a poser," exultingly boasts. "You vowed that no butcher should call me his bride. That this vow you fulfill, my first asking shall be. And since so many maids in your clutches have died, then show me a bloodier butcher," said she. Then shrill scream the spectres the charnel house gloom. Swift lightnings disperse, and the palace destroy. Again Nancy stood in the little back room, and again at her knee knelt the young butcher's boy. "I'll have done with dead husbands," she brisket bespeaks. "I'll now take a live one, so fetch me a ring." And when pressed to her lips were his red beefen cheeks, she loved him much more than the shrivelled ghost king. No longer his steaks and his cutlets she spurns, no longer he fears his grim rival's pale band. Yet still, when the famed 1st of April returns, the sprites rise in squadrons, and Nancy demand. This informs you, Tom Tapp, why tonight I remove, for I dread the approach of the shroud-covered hosts, who tell with loud shriek that resentment and love still nip the cold heart of Grim, King of the Ghosts. I've changed the ending for a couple of reasons. The first is that it has the same solution to the King of the Air, which it's parodying, and that solution is set up so that Lewis can note how important it is for ladies to be able to tell one kind of verb from another, and as a joke it wasn't great at the time, and it falls even flatter now. The second is that for Grimm it doesn't work because he can call up the ghosts of the famous dead. "Show me a greater butcher than you." Give me a minute. Right, well, this is Tamerlane, who killed everyone in several cities and piled their heads into pyramids. You may have seen Mr. Marlowe's play about him. Done. The necromance arc just kind of came to me because I wanted you to have a reason to interact with Grimm other than as a combat opponent. Vanth is one of the few death goddesses in Western Europe who doesn't kill people. She's just part of the process of ministering to the dying. Also, she's winged, so she suited the imps. Your saga may vary.